Okay. Welcome everyone to our April 30th meeting. We want to get started and we need a roll call. There is one member who's taking the meeting remotely, so Corey's going to read a script to address that.
All right, thank you, Mayor Haskell. Unfortunately, Councilmember Walter is not able to attend in person due to illness. She will be attending remotely for just cause due to this illness. I have confirmed that Councilmember Walter may do so under new Brown Act meeting provisions AB 2449, provided a quorum of the council attends in person. Given that I see 4 council members here in person tonight, Councilmember Walter may attend remotely. Councilmember Walter, as required by the Brown Act, could you please let us know if there is anyone 18 years of age or older in the room with you? If so, your relationship with them. Also, as a reminder, please keep your camera on for the duration of the meeting.
Except I'm by myself with my cat.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Okay, great. So roll call, please.
Councilmember Walter,
Present.
Councilmember Flynn,
Present.
Councilmember Hefty,
Present.
Vice Mayor Taylor,
Present.
Mayor Haskell.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. All right, so to remind people, today is a study session, budget study session number 2 about expenses. But before we launch that, and to remind the public, we don't take oral communications when it's a study session. But Mark does have an announcement regarding staff that I'd like him to make before we get started.
Thank you, Mayor. I did want to introduce to the council and to the public who's watching, Robert Burt, who is our new town engineer. He began on Monday, the 28th, and today he was out checking easements at the Willow Commons.
Excellent.
That you?
Robert is right here.
Welcome.
Can
So-
I ask you to just come up and kind of wave at the public? Because you're here. Why not?
Just
Or
go
maybe
ahead.
over there. That would be great.
Thank you, Mayor.
And why don't you just remind us where you're coming from?
It's nice to meet everyone. My name is Robert Burt, council members, public. Nice to meet you. I come from private sector for the most part. I've also worked with a few other cities in the area. I've done a lot of third-party work with various cities, and I've participated a lot with San Francisco Planning Committee. I look forward to bringing those skills here. Thank you very much.
Great. We're thrilled to have you, and thanks for joining today.
Welcome.
I can just say it went very well at the Willow Commons. They worked well together and
Great.
smooth. Okay?
All right.
Good work.
You have to stay through the
No, you don't.
Although it will be fascinating. Fascinating. Okay, so it's a study session and Tony's going to be presenting, I assume. What's the format that you envision for the meeting? You have a presentation and anything special you want to note for us?
No, it'll be the same as the revenue one. I'll do my PowerPoint presentation, kind of going over all the expenses, and then at the end, it'll be open for discussion and questions, and hopefully have some answers.
Okay. All right, so I'll hand it over to you to get started with the presentation.
If I may, through the mayor, while Tony's bringing up the presentation, if I can just remind council to please speak into their mics, as how I know we've had some audio issue and Helen is at home via Zoom and as are the viewers. Thank you.
That's a good reminder generally. Thank you.
Okay, so this is our second budget study session for the fiscal year 2025-26 budget. Full overview, we'll be reviewing the town organization consisting of departments and the funds that we use, and then we'll also be going over the expense categories that make up the budget. There are 22 total functions within the town, and they're broken down into several categories. There's town administration, which consists of the town council, town committees, town manager. We have a new department this year, the town attorney. We'll be highlighting that in the budget this year. Previous years, that was reported in the non-departmental section of the budget. The other departments of administration include town clerk and finance. Then we have public safety, which consists of police services, fire services, dispatch services, planning and building, which is the planning division, building division, code compliance, and customer deposits. That's our project applicants for projects to do house renovations and other types of projects within the town. Recreation includes community hall and parks and fields maintenance. Public works consists of roads, facilities, and development services. Non-departmental, this is most of our expenses that cannot be allocated to one specific department. It's what we use to calculate our overhead. Then we have the road maintenance districts. We have 5 funds consisting of those. And then our capital projects include roads and right-of-way improvements, parks and fields improvements, open space improvements, and facilities and building improvements. Looking at the town funds, we have 20 active funds that are broken down into 5 categories. We have the general fund, then we have special revenue funds consisting of grants, public safety, sales tax. We kind of went over these in the revenue budget study session, but the reason these are special revenue funds is these have specific funding sources. They need to be accounted for separately within our fund structure. Our capital projects are funded out of our one fund. We have the special districts, which I alluded to earlier. We have 5 funds for the special districts. And then we have the agency fund, which is the customer deposits that we use for our project through planning and building. Looking at sources and uses, as you can see, the general fund is taxes and fees are the source, and the use is general operations. Our grants, the source are grants, and the use of the grants can be used for operations or capital projects. Then we have our 2 public safety sales tax and COPS grant. The source of those are restricted for public safety. We have the open space fund. The source of those funds are UUT and any contributions. And the use of that fund is for open space acquisitions and preservation. We have the library county or any contributions, and the use is for the library. Gas tax, the source of the gas tax funds is our highway users tax and our road maintenance and rehabilitation account with the state. And again, those funds are restricted for transportation purposes. We have the Frog Pond Open Space Remnant, that the source of those funds are contributions. And again, those are used for Frog Pond Open Space Remnant preservation. Then we have Measure A, M, and W. Those sources are sales tax measures. And again, those funds are restricted for transportation projects. Then we have a Park and Lieu fund, and the source of that is a developer fee. And the use of those funds are restricted for parks and fields. Then we have the Inclusion in Lieu fund. Again, it's set up with developer fees, and the use of those funds are for affordable housing. We have the Capital Projects Fund. Most of those funds are funded through the general fund and hopefully starting next year, contributions. And again, the use of these funds are for capital projects. Then we have the road maintenance district funds. Those are sourced through assessments. And the use of those funds are for private road maintenance within those districts. And then we have our customer deposits funds, and the source of those funds are applicant deposits, and the use of those funds are restricted for applicant projects. Expenses are broken down into the following categories, and we will be reviewing these. Salaries, benefits, supplies and services, maintenance, capital improvements, and transfers. So in order to begin with the salaries, we start with the salary schedule, and the salary schedule is adopted annually by the council. We'll be bringing the salary schedule for 25-26 in June, I believe. Yeah. And this is what is used budget workforce plan for the budget. The one you see highlighted in the slide is our salary schedule for 24-25. So salaries for 25-26, we are going to have about 18 full-time equivalents. We're currently recruiting for the town manager and town clerk. And then the recruitment for the engineering technician 1 will begin shortly. So most of the positions are filled with the exception of the town manager, town clerk, and the engineering technician 1. You can see there are 6 positions in administration, 3 in finance, 3 full-time positions in planning and building, and we have 2 part-time help. They make up almost one complete full-time. And then in public works, we have 4 positions allocated for those functions. And looking at benefits, we're talking about retirement, medical, dental, and vision. But for this study session, we're going to be focusing primarily on retirement and medical because the dental and vision rates haven't changed that much. But retirement, medical, there's been consistent change from year to year. So looking at retirement, we have 2 tiers, and our retirement programs are managed by CalPERS through contract. We have, as I stated, we have 2 tiers. One is for classic miscellaneous employees, and their retirement formula is 2% and 55. And then in January of 2013, when Governor Brown was in office, the Public Employee Pension Reform Act was passed, and that created for any new employee hired after January 1st, 2013. They were put into a higher tier, it's 2% and 62%. Since it's a longer formula, the costs are lower, and you'll see that as we play out with the contributions. The employee contribution rate for classic employees percent, so that means 7% of their salary is deducted and contributed to PERS for retirement. And for PEPR employees, it's 7.75%. Currently, 3 classic miscellaneous employees and 11 PEPR employees. And you see the contribution rates from 21-22 through 25-26. The classic employees have went from 10.34% to 11.94%, and this is the employer cost. So when payroll is 11.94% of employee salary, the town pays to CalPERS on behalf of the employees. And for PEPR employees, it's 7.96%. And you look at total contributions in fiscal year 21-22, we had a little 175,000. And then for 24-25, we currently have 100,000. We're going to end up significantly lower than the previous year, and that's primarily due to the staffing shortages and staffing vacancies. We just don't have as many employees as we've had in the previous years. So, plus also more employees are on the PEPR plan, so those contribution rates are lower to begin with. The unfunded accrued liability. The unfunded accrued liability is the difference between the actuarially determined pension liability and the market value of assets held at CalPERS amortized on an annual basis for 20 years. So if you look at the chart in 21-22, the classic unfunded UAL, $88,000, and PEPR was under 4,000. And these fluctuate from year to year. A lot of it has to do with how CalPERS investments do and how they're rolled back through the formula as they do the valuation. The valuations we receive on an annual basis, the evaluation is behind just because of the amount of data that the actuaries have to go through. So there's a 2-year lag. So the valuation summary we received in July of 2024 was going to project our 25-26 contribution rate, but it was the liability for July 30th, 2023. So this all gets adjusted through our financial statements. The auditors, they know what to do. So, but I'm putting this out there because for 25-26, we have to pay $168,000 to CalPERS on top of what we pay for the contribution rates through payroll. And that's about a $36,000 increase from the previous year. And looking at medical, the chart that I have, I've done the monthly premium rates for employee only plans. The 2 most popular ones are Anthem and Kaiser. And as you can see, Anthem rates have increased approximately 12% on average since fiscal year 2021-22. Kaiser rates have increased 9% on average since fiscal year 21-22. Since these premium increases go into effect mid-year, the budget assumes a 5% increase in medical premiums. Because on average, it's a 10% increase for the whole year, but it only affects the budget for 6 months. So that's why it's a 5% assumption on the increase in medical premiums. And as I stated earlier, the rates displayed are for employee-only plans. Services. Town services are supported through contract providers and consultants. For example, the town administration is the town attorney, who's provides services via contract. Public safety, we have San Mateo County Sheriff and the Woodside Fire Protection District. And for planning and building, we have many consultants, but the one we use the most is Good City. So that's why I've chosen to include them in this example. So San Mateo County Sheriff. So I have identified costs since 2018 and 19. From 2018 to 2022-23, there was a, on average, 9% increase every year. In 23-24, there was a gigantic reset and costs went up about 57% for that 1 year. 24-25 was a 1.5% increase. And then 25-26 was a 5.39% increase. Now, this is the gross cost of the contract. From 23-24 to 25-26, we did receive almost a little bit over $1 million in credit. $426,000 came from the sheriff's office because they delayed or they deferred billing the first 6 months at the new rate. So that was the credit for there. And then we had an additional $634,000 negotiated with the county administrator. At the last year of that, those credits expired next year, 25-26, and that's a $211,000 credit. So the net increase to the fiscal year 25-26 general fund budget is $334,000 just for the sheriff's contract alone. And then 26-27, if the contract goes up 6%, which I'm projecting, that's an additional $363,000. So in 2 years, the sheriff's contract is going to increase almost $700,000. And our revenues will not keep pace with that. And looking at Woodside Fire provides services, the chipper program, vegetation management, and we share the cost of a fuel mitigation engineer. And these have been the costs since fiscal year 2021. There was significant increase in vegetation management starting in 22-23 through 24-25. I do not have a projection for 25-26 yet. I did reach out to Woodside Fire, and they are currently in negotiations with their labor groups, so they don't have any numbers for me at the moment. So Good City. So Good City provides support service for town planning staff and direct service for applicant projects. Town costs are paid out of the general fund. Applicant paid out of customer deposits. Since fiscal year 2021, a little bit over $2 million has been paid to Good City. 900,000 of that is for town services. 1.2 million is for applicant projects. But this is one area that we need to control moving forward. Not just on the town side portion, but also costs that are being charged to the applicants as well. So moving on to maintenance, basically it's recreation and public works. We have about $115,000 identified for community hall and parks and fields. Parks and fields is funded by park fees. And for public works, we have 20,000 allocated for vehicle. We do have an aging fleet, a very aging fleet. So our costs may exceed that actual. And then for building, we have 20,000 as well. These were reset through the, when we did the revised budget, back in November. The capital improvement plan. So these are the numbers that we had for 24-25 in the proposed budget that were deferred for the revised budget. But this is just an example of how the capital projects are identified, which funds are used to pay for those, and what projects are being identified. So for this example, this is roads and right of way. We have the Beacons project, which is pretty much the only capital project moving forward right now because it was funded by a grant and also Measure W. There was no general fund money associated with this, so that's why that project went forward. But the other projects, future design and resurfacing, and if they had a general fund component, those projects were deferred. But as you can see, we had about $1.3 million identified in roads and right-of-way capital improvement projects. And then looking at parks and fields maintenance, we don't have any projects identified at the moment. I do believe the Parks and Rec Committee is working on a proposal for resurfacing the town courts. So that might come back to you in May. Open space capital improvement. This, again, no projects identified. But one example of a project that was done during the year was the Shady Trail maintenance rehab project. But since that was funded by donors, that project went ahead. And then we have facilities and buildings capital improvements. These were the projects that were identified last year. The play pillar in Town Hall, the sheriff's substation of 600,000, which is going to be revamped. IT upgrades at the town center, infrastructure improvements, and vehicle replacement at the town center. These were all funded or proposed to be funded through the general fund, and so they were deferred for this fiscal year. But this is how the capital improvement plan be presented to council. And we'll have a further breakdown of what each project is, what the scope's going to be, how it's going to be funded, and the timing of it. And that'll be brought back to council for your discussion and approval on the second meeting in May. Was it the first meeting? Okay, so that concludes my report. And I yield it back to council for questions.
Right, so rather than discussion, does the council have any questions for Tony on his presentation? Everyone should take their,
Would you mind flipping a few slides? Because
Yeah, me
it was
too.
going pretty fast.
That's one. Thank you. Oh, cool.
questions?
Sorry. Hmm? It's not in the packet.
No.
We made available.
And then
It's
if you
hot
could do
off the
the
press.
next one. So some of my quick questions were on the Classic and Pepra page. I wasn't on, it said, yeah, the number,
I'll pull it up.
yeah, so it's employee contribution rate.
Right.
So employees are having that pull their salary?
Yes.
Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Now, is the town doing some type of matching or how does?
The town's paying 11.94%.
Okay, so their total would
The
be.
real cost is 18.94%. The town's paying almost 12.
Okay, and the number 12% or 10 or 11%, these numbers that you have on the side here for employer contribution rates, that's determined by the auditor or by the actuary.
Right.
Okay, and based on, you told us about the kind of imbalance with the timing, it would appear that they, excuse me, haven't taken into account the huge increase before November or before February of this year in the stock market, does that have any impact on what we actually may end up owing, or am I not understanding?
That'll be reflected in the next valuation report.
So the expectation is that we may not owe as much because the stock market has done well?
Right,
or-
if the investment, if their investment portfolio and their assumption is 6.8%. So if their investment portfolio brings in more than 6.8%, then yes, that'll reduce the liability. But then there's other factors that go into it. That'll be one factor that'll reduce the liability, but then there's other factors that are going to increase the liability. So there's a whole range of assumptions, and every single one of those assumptions need to be correct or for that liability to be what it is.
So how exactly do we come up with the 10 to a 12% besides the actuary, but in terms of what has been negotiated with employees in terms of what our contribution should be?
Those numbers are non-negotiable. CalPERS sets them.
Oh, okay. And then in terms of, you said that we're paying 11% plus 7% each year. That's coming out of our general fund, correct? Or?
Well, yeah, it's payroll. So it's a
Oh.
function of payroll, and our payroll comes out of the general.
Okay, so it's included already in the salary numbers. Okay, great.
And it's the same with Social Security and Medicare as well. Those are also included in the total salary and benefits cost.
Okay. And then do you have a sense of, in the fire department slide, the FME, there was something called FME. I wasn't entirely sure what that
That's
meant.
I pulled it off the invoice. That's,
Oh.
so,
Because I get the impression when I was kind of going through the warrants that we're paying for the SERP representative.
I believe it's similar.
Is that the,
I
is that
mean,
the,
that was, historically, it was FME,
okay,
so,
but that would
yeah.
be the,
same person.
okay, all right. And are we sharing that cost with Woodside?
We are being billed directly. I don't know if it's a shared cost.
Because it comes out to be about 50,000, and I would assume that,
There are some invoices they send where they say,
Mhm.
here's Portola Valley share. Others, here's the direct cost.
yeah, okay. I would assume that Selena's making more than 50,000 a year, but I don't know how many hours she works. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we must be sharing the cost. I don't know, this was going pretty fast, so, oh, okay, under capital improvements, the
Mhm.
town hall one showed the boiler cost to be, replacement to be 25,000.
Correct.
My guess is that's probably pretty low, but I'm not sure. But anyway, so the question is, we know we have 64,000 available from PCE. When does that kind of get incorporated into the decision
We
making?
will do that when we do the capital improvement plan. These numbers for 24, 25. I haven't updated for 25, 26 yet. I'm
Oh.
just showing you how it's going to be presented to you as a body.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, those are my main questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Mary, do you have specific questions?
My specific question has to do with why the number 20.6 employees keeps coming up as our goal.
Are you talking
And
about FTE?
FTEs, yeah. Because that seems, and you mentioned in your presentation that we've had more employees in the past, and I'm not aware of that. We certainly didn't have more employees, say 5 years ago or 10 years ago. How did we get stuck on the 20.6?
Well, that was the
Seems like we
number-
should have, the budget should reflect reality, what we can afford,
Right, and this budget's gonna have 18.
right? But
The 20 was previous administrations.
yeah, I
um,
understand that.
Yeah,
And I'm just hoping we'll give it up.
yeah, but that also, to get to 20 means drastic reduction in the use of consultants. However, I don't foresee a model where we have no consultants. We are still gonna need consultants, even if we had 20 employees, we would still need to have consultants, just with the level of work and
Yeah.
expertise that is needed.
Thank you.
Could you
Part of
bring
that could be discussed when we get to
bring
the
that slide back
discussion.
up, please?
All right, Craig?
So I've got a bunch of small questions. The first one was, what are dispatch services?
I'm sorry,
The
What
who?
are dispatch services?
dispatch services, that's the county dispatch,
911.
when you call 911.
Okay, so we're paying that in addition to the sheriff's contract. This is
Yeah,
like a
it's a separate function.
Great, okay,
Weird.
yeah. No, it's, it's interesting because then the sheriff's billing us for communication, so we might want to
Yeah,
look at.
there's a few things in there that I would like to look at.
Yeah, so I would suggest we look at that because it feels like maybe there's some double billing going on between the sheriff's contract and what they're charging us and what we're paying for through dispatch services. Next question is, town committees and the budget for the town committees. Do we separate out the Brown Act committees from the town manager committees?
No, they're all funded through town committees.
Okay, so basically the council decides how much money to put in that bucket, but the town manager decides how much to spend on the town manager committees? Is that?
Well, ultimately, council decides what is being spent by town committees. We're gonna be having the town committee's budget presented in May.
Right, I'm trying to separate out and tease out, town committees are appointed by the council. and
Correct.
subject to the Brown Act, et cetera.
Mhm.
And I get how we control what they spend money on. Town manager committees are controlled by the town manager, and the council actually doesn't have say over what they spend. So I'm trying to figure out, do we just give the town manager a pot of money that he then spends, or is it under the town manager's sort of budget fund? And I don't need an answer right now. I'd more ask you to think
Well,
about it.
Philip, if it's in the budget, council has to approve it.
That's the problem. Whether it's
Right,
budget-
but there's
So
a difference
whatever
between.
amount is put in there, I mean, the town manager can recommend, hey, I'm gonna spend dollars, but still needs it to be adopted in the budget.
Okay. I'm just assuming it's more that we're adopting a bucket of money rather than individual items. I just.
I
and-
have individual line items for each committee.
The committees are submitting.
Yeah,
even
I'm
on-
getting
Okay.
requests.
Well, I guess the only question I'm asking here is it'd be interesting just to check with the attorney to make sure that we, the council, can approve individual town manager committee budgets. And it's fine if we can. That was my question.
Again, this is the council's budget.
Yeah, got it.
So I mean, any line item in the budget needs to be approved by council.
Right, but I'm assuming the town manager has some kind of fund that we do as a sort of a bucket that they spend, but, okay.
Nope.
All right, let's keep going. I don't want to rat hole on something small. Public safety funds. Can we spend those on law enforcement and fire? Or is it just law enforcement?
That's a gray area.
Okay,
But it's primarily police.
Okay.
I know there have been challenges from the fire folks to access those funds.
okay,
But my understanding, it's law enforcement. Because I have, any reporting that I have to do, it's for law enforcement.
okay. For customer deposits, when we get interest, do we pay them back with interest or do we collect that
No,
interest and that
they're-
goes?
those do not generate interest. Any interest generated goes into the general fund.
Okay, got it. Donation funds. So, we've been talking about this donation policy and stuff. Where do they end up going? They go into a capital improvement? They go into the
Right, so if they're-
general fund, but they're earmarked, like,
If they're gonna donate money for a specific project, and it's a capital improvement project.
Yep.
So that money's will be deposited into the fund that is funding that project. So
Okay.
if it's a road project, it'll come out, it's gonna be 401, which is capital projects. But the department is gonna be roads and right of way, or parks and fields, or open space, depending on what the specific project where we park that project.
Okay, so it goes into 401 and then you
Yeah.
have like subcategories
Right.
that are your.
Right.
I don't need it now, but I'd be curious. I mean, you gave us like the total expense on like revenue, I mean, not revenue, but retirement per year. It'd be interesting to know what the total medical, how that all kind of adds up.
Well, medical's offset by, because employees contribute
Sure.
as well, so that,
Okay.
it's a little
Um,
bit more. And then we also have a cafeteria plan, which kind of offsets that as well.
Right.
so yeah.
Yeah, it would just be nice to sort of see, because that's an expense that seems to me moves up pretty quickly as well.
On the medical side, yeah.
Yeah.
Dental and vision hasn't changed and.
Right,
but yeah.
but that's why I'm interested in sort of being able to see that piece of.
Okay.
So then I think we talked a little bit about other public safety costs. I guess one of my questions on that is, which of these are tunable? Like I get, we get an invoice for this stuff, but what if we said, hey, we're gonna do this every other year, or we're gonna do half as much? Like, how do we as a council think about some of those? Because they're not, like the sheriff's contract, I get it. We've said we want X and they said, great, for X, you're gonna pay us Y. But for a lot of these other public safety things, we've said, well, you're gonna tell us how much it costs to do road right-of-way clearing.
Mhm.
But we could say, well, okay, but we want to cap that at some number.
Right.
So I guess that's my question is how tunable is that number?
Well, we'd have to have negotiations with the fire protection district, say, we can only pay X amount. And then it's gonna be, are they gonna be able to do it? Or can it, it's like, hey, we don't want to have as many crews out, or
Right.
maybe every other month, but yeah, that's gonna be a negotiation with the fire district, because they're supposed to come to us and tell us what their plan is.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to tease out here is it seems like this is something that town staff should be deciding what's the appropriate amount rather than an outside organization telling us what they're gonna do and bill us for.
I agree with you,
Okay.
but that hasn't been the practice.
Yeah, and that's fine. So, so it sounds like that is tunable. Like, I mean, we have the ability to do that. We just haven't done it.
I believe so.
Okay, great.
But like the other, like the dispatch service one, that increases 3% every year. And it's less than, it's like 70 to 80,000. It's not a large dollar amount in regards to the other public safety item.
Yeah, no, and I get like dispatch, we don't have a choice. It's
Right.
just like, you just have to pay for dispatch services. So then, so we talked about PCE. So when you mentioned the boiler costs, were those, so you're giving us last year, did we spend $25,000 on a boiler replacement?
We did not. It
Okay, so
it
that was, this
deferred.
was our budget, but this is.
That was the budget, and that's what the number Howard came up with.
Okay, got it. But these weren't actuals. These are
No, no, no.
basically just a proposed budget.
These were the
last year. Got
proposed
it. Okay,
budget.
I just want to make sure. That's what I thought was going on. IT services, is there not, I mean, Corey and I have talked a little bit about this, but, is there an opportunity to maybe put out an RFP and look and see whether we can control some of the IT spend? Because it seems to me that for the money we're spending, we're not getting this IT support that we need. And I'm just trying to figure out whether it just means we need to have a bigger budget or we need an RFP and find somebody who can do a better job for the price that we're paying. But I would flag the IT stuff as something that I think that we need to consider, because I wouldn't say IT services as they exist.
Mhm.
Right, but I want to be careful. I'm starting to bleed into discussion. I think that's it. Great, thank you. Appreciate.
Great. Helen, how about you? Question?
Thank you. So a couple of questions. Can I just be clear, the unfunded UAL was 168,000, is that annual?
That is the amount for 25, 26. It will be a different amount for 26, 27.
Okay. Do we expect, it looks like there was a large jump, almost what is that, 36,000? So do we expect it to continue to go up like that, or does it depend on whether we have, how many classic employees we have versus Pepra?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Since we only have 3 employees in the classic plan, once they retire or leave the town, and they're not replaced with another classic employee, but another Pepper employee, then once the number of active members goes down to 0, then that plan becomes inactive, and then we're subject to a higher rate because there's no new money coming in. So CalPERS still needs to have some mechanism to fund the ongoing liability because the liability increases every year. So that is a potential for that, for the classic plan. But the Pepper plan, it's, as you can see, the UAL is less than 100,000, or not the UAL, but the total liability is less than 100,000. And that's something that if we had at one particular year, we had a surplus of money, we could say we can prepay it, or we can just pay off the whole liability on an ongoing just on a one-time basis, and that'll reset, give it a fresh start. But I mean, I would only recommend that for the Pepper plan, but I wouldn't recommend that anytime soon. But there are many variables that do go into the calculation for the pension liability, so that number will fluctuate from year to year.
Got it. Thank you. Can page some of the things that you sent us earlier in the week is different from your presentation. So is that okay that I ask some questions from what you sent us?
That was the revised budget and the mid-year, or no, the proposed budget.
Right.
Yeah.
So for instance, on page 8 of that budget, there was a non-departmental
Yes.
for almost 6 million. What of revenues? What is that?
That's where all of our tax revenue goes into.
Got it.
Property tax, UUT, franchise fees, any revenue that's not related to a program, say, so it's not related to recreation, or it's not related to building and planning, it goes into the non-departmental revenue function of the general fund.
Okay, thank you. And then on page 9, it shows that we have our planning staff as, and I'm assuming that's because it's proposed, for all of the planning staff is filled, except for frozen position. But then let's see, and you talk about savings from vacancies though of $800,000.
Right, because we weren't paying them.
Right, okay. So this is proposed if we hire more people so that we have better services for the community, right? That we would lose those savings though.
Well, if the position's vacant, we're not paying it, so that's going to create vacancy savings.
Right. But then there are the consultant costs for like Good City that you mentioned.
Right.
You had said the cost for Good City as is always Aaron's crew is a good crew, but they're expensive. How would you recommend containing cost for planning? And that, I mean,
Cap their hours, cap the number of consultants they use on the projects. We can all have that conversation with Good City.
okay. Great. And then can we talk about the sheriff's contract? If you could go to that slide. I didn't catch the page number. Did I hear you correctly that you said basically it's gonna, because net increase, it is gonna be about 700K.
Over the next 2 fiscal years.
And are we sure of that? Is that just projected based on your percentage of, and
I'm sure of the 25-26 number. The 26-27 is a projection based on historical.
okay.
I mean, they wanted to buy $4.2 million in radios.
Yeah.
Somehow that would end up coming back through us, so.
Yeah.
And massage chair.
Right, the $76,000 table.
Right, that too.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the sheriff's contract, do we have we're not doing another, like, trying to do I guess that's still, just remind me, we're still under negotiation for future prices, right?
Yes, we are currently working with the sheriff's office to attempt to negotiate for future price.
Okay.
We're also talking to other towns and cities as well.
Right, okay. Right, the sheriff contract is just, okay. I think that's all of my questions for the time being. Thank you.
So Julia, can I just make one quick aside and then I'll let you I just, on this last question, the 20.6 FTE, this was the proposal for the last year's budget.
The proposed 2020, yeah.
Yeah, so I think people keep getting confused about this is proposed for next year. This is just what was proposed a year ago.
Mhm.
And that's why it's in
Right.
your in
Right,
the slides.
And we eliminated 2 positions
I-
in the revised.
exactly.
And then the others were just vacant.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify that because I think people get a little confused. Thank you.
Right. Most of my colleagues have raised most of my questions. What I wanted to drill down a little bit more into was a timeline for practically getting a bearing on how we're working with Good City. As you said, we're not getting rid of consultants because that's impractical given our FTEs. But are we undertaking some diligence to figure out exactly what they're doing and who's doing what? And are we going to have that type of information in the next month or so to inform our final budget discussion?
You had conversations with them.
We're in conversation with them right now as we try to sort out what's working, what's not working in the planning and building department. And part of that is what you're talking about is what are they doing and so on. So yes, I've had so far one meeting with the founders. I have another meeting with the one who's most active here, Jamie Bourne. I have that coming up either Friday or next week. So
And the
we owe
goal
you that by June 30.
by June 30th,
Yeah.
but we need to adopt the budget maybe
Yes, we'll try to-
earlier.
Yes.
So I just want to have a sense. I mean, it doesn't need to be granular and very precise, but I do think we need a sense of we can't replace these functions. And at the same time, I would be looking and is it realistic to look for a sense of, well, they're doing these functions very efficiently, or it's clear what's going on. There's some room in this category for reassessment over some time period.
Okay.
And is that a practical thing to look to you for? Just so we can figure out where to use our energy.
I think it is. I mean, some of it is what our internal people tell me as well. But I think it's a reasonable.
Okay.
So I will target an earlier date than June 30th for that.
Yep.
What I promise you on June 30th is more of what can be done to make it work better for our community.
Yeah, which is a whole discussion we don't need to get to yet. Okay, thank you. All right, so if there's no other questions from the council, Mary, it looks like you have one.
Well, yes, and it's clearly a question whether it bleeds into discussion or not, I don't know. But if we were unincorporated, what services would would the sheriff be providing us? Or more specifically, as an unincorporated community, what wouldn't we be getting from the sheriffs that we're paying for that's extra? And how can they do that to us, so
Well,
to
I mean,
speak?
if we're unincorporated, we're just another part of the county.
And
So
they get
So it's
full-
whatever they provide to Ladera.
Right, so what is that? What is the difference? Is it dispatches? Apparently, we're paying for that separately. Do they pay for that separately?
No, dispatch, we pay separate.
You may not get dedicated FTEs
Right.
that you're paying for. you're just getting whatever's out there. So whatever calls come in and so on, but here you're paying for a dedicated point of service. So that's basically the difference, my understanding. So even if we had another department, because we're exploring that now, another
Mhm, okay.
department, it would be for X number of FTEs dedicated to us.
Mm-hmm.
Spaced here, I mean, that's why you notice in there, costs to possibly renovate space to give them a better space from the courtyard to the town hall. So that would be the difference. Now, whether the community would see any difference on that or not is highly debatable. But that would need to be the difference.
But
Mary,
you wouldn't see an extra bill.
And you would not have an extra bill, no.
Mary, is your question whether it's reasonable to have a better understanding of those differentials?
Yes.
And if that's the case, why? Because I don't think we're talking about disincorporating for this.
No.
Thank
initial
you.
Planning cycle.
Okay, no,
That's
worth it.
another discussion.
We have a contract, we have to pay it.
Right, right. Yep.
One
Rebecca?
more question. I want to follow up on your question. So there's a number of items that need investigation, obviously. We talked about the sheriff, we talked about the fire, all the fire services that we're getting. Obviously Good City and the other consultants that we have. Our IT services, we've brought up a bunch of these. So what I'm trying to understand a little bit better is where does the responsibility fall to do that evaluation, which could be quite staff intensive, very, a lot of time. And then is there time within our rather limited staff to actually go into depth in these items, especially in the next month, if you will? I'm just trying to get a grip of, how much, obviously negotiations with the sheriff is not a 1-month project, negotiation with fire, not a 1-month project, but, just trying to get an understanding of what we can expect.
I anticipate that, yes, there's a lot of intensive that we need to do. And if you give us direction to do it, we'll do it. But it's going to be over the next fiscal year to set us up for 26, 27. So I'm kind of 25, 26, I'm kind of looking as a bridge year. Just for other factors as well. But yeah, I mean, it would be something that we would have to overtake the next fiscal year to fine tune the analysis and come up with numbers that can work, but we'd also have to work with our consultants too.
And can
That's
you,
partially discussion, so I wouldn't mind coming back to that in the discussion part
Okay.
as well.
and can you address what the deadlines are for negotiating with the sheriff? Because my kind of understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have to have like a 1-year notice or something to the sheriff to cancel.
I believe we have to let them know before January. Yeah.
So 6-month notice.
Yes, we have to
Okay.
let them know by January. I think it's spelled out in the contract that way specifically.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions, Helen, your remote, so I want to give you one last.
Yeah, thanks. I actually do have 2 more questions. As long as we're looking at our contracts carefully, we should do the same thing for the planning contract. And that's maybe more of a comment, and I should have phrased it as, has anyone looked at any other planning contracts other than Good City? So for instance, there's M Group and I think there's MIG maybe. There are a few other planning shops out there. So I'm just wondering, I know that, and again, I doubt we can get this done in the next 2 months. But I'm just wondering if staff looked at any other options out there.
That is an action item for us. Yes.
Parents is already, our interim planning and building director is already looking at what services we're receiving from Good City, as well as considering there's other smaller contracts related, if it would be best to receive all those services from one firm, or if there's a different way to do it to make it most cost effective as well as staff effective, and seeing what we could do in-house versus externally.
Thanks. And my other question is again, this is from what was sent out before the meeting. Is that it showed quite a vast, that we were, no, I can't find it. That, sorry, I lost my place in the slide deck, but about our deficit, that the reserves will be down quite a bit. And taking what you said before from that this is the bridge year, and then the reserves will be taken into consideration in future discussions. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, there will be a substantive discussion on the fund balance reserve um, as we move to adopt the budget. The Finance Committee has made a recommendation on the fund balance reserve. But yeah, the part of the reason for the revised budget in November was that the fund balance reserve number for the proposed budget was incorrect. And it was adjusted down to 2 million. And as of today, or actually as of last month, we are running a bit of a surplus. But that was before we paid the sheriff's contract. But we did have $1 million property tax, so hopefully we're still in the black by the time we get to April numbers. But yeah, we're still planning to balance the budget. That reserves aren't going to go down. If they do, it's going to be very, 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 very small. But hopefully we'll have a surplus.
Great.
Did,
Wait, Helen, are you done with your questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Mary?
oh, I just had a question. What was the Finance Committee's recommendation for the fund balance reserve?
20%, to reduce it from 60% to 20%. This allows us, would also give us more flexibility should we have to do some deficit spending.
And have we approved that?
Not yet.
That would be part of
The
this
council
budget.
needs, it's a council policy, so, but the Finance Committee is recommending.
And
the
it'll be
council
part of this
reduce it.
budget.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so that ends the questions. Go to public comment. I see no one in the schoolhouse with their hand raised for questions or comments. Rita Gomez, you're first online.
Hi, I am driving there and I'll be there in like 3 minutes or less. Can I wait until I come in? Because it's,
If you're 3 minutes, sure.
yes, thank you.
Yep, okay. Dave Cardinal, you're next.
Great, thank you. Two hopefully quick comments about the sheriff's contract. First of all, I think the notion that we can't somehow renegotiate it is a total red herring. The sheriff is paying double overtime because they're stretched so thin. They would love to have less services to provide. Now, we pay for deluxe service. We pay essentially 4.5 full-time equivalents to get one 24/7 plus backup and overtime and vacation and all that. If we want to have less service, I guarantee they would be delighted to cut back on service. So I just don't see that the number as being meaningful, except if we want the level of service, in which case that's the price. Second, I can't imagine another organization fulfilling our security needs. First of all, we are 100% surrounded by San Mateo County Sheriff areas. We get huge service. There was a mental health issue in Ladera. I counted them, 7 sheriff's deputy cars there within 15 minutes. So we're not going to get, I mean, there's just no other way we're going to get that kind of service. So I think we need to pick our service level, negotiate wisely, and stick with SMC for whatever we can get done. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave. All right, I'm not seeing any other hands up. Oh, Dale Fow, your hand just went up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I didn't hear any comments about the legal budget and where we are and any attempts to adjust that over the coming year. I've been looking at the warrant list and it looks to me like it's been exceeding the budget, but of course I could be incorrect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Rita Gomez has walked in and I know she has some comments. So Rita, if you wouldn't mind, you're the next.
Thank you for your patience. I was just driving down the road and our town doesn't have good Wi-Fi on the road. A lot of my questions have been already answered. I've been listening and I appreciate it. A couple of years ago, we put in the budget money for electric trucks for maintenance. I don't know if that money is still in the budget. And for rentals, I have a question about rentals that we have for the town center. Are we balancing out? I guess it's really for Tony. Are we balancing out when we're using the rental space for in-kind? Are we showing that? How is that shown in the books? And then what I've been asking for months about us reviewing all of our contracts. Recently in a town council meeting, there was a question about something that was on the warrant list and it had been signed by the previous town manager and it was re-reviewed and I don't know if it eventually had gotten paid, but it was the residents questioning that prompted it into going something else. There are residents in town that would gladly help you, Tony, go through some of the old contracts. And I had mentioned in the finance meeting the other day, you know, for the bicycle traffic safety, we have not had a sheriff's representative showing up or producing these reports that have been shared by the public. So if that's something that we're supposed to be getting with our 1 point whatever $1 million contract, and we're not getting that, if I'm paying for a service and I'm not getting it, I'm getting a discount or some money back. And if you need residents to call and help, we will do it respectfully, but we are here to help. The general plan was written with the thought of the volunteers in this wonderful town. And everything that's being discussed today is being paid by us, the residents in this town. So please, please, I implore for you to let us help you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any other hands raised online. So I think this ends the public comment portion of the meeting. Coming back, there were a couple of questions. Tony, are you comfortable responding? One was how we're tracking on legal budget. And the other had to do with items that Rita mentioned, electric trucks, things like that. I don't know if you're in a position to address any of that
On the
today.
legal budget, Catherine does submit an annual or a monthly budget report. It's reviewed. The budget is 245,000. She's currently about 190 of that. That's through February. So, she may end up a little bit over. But yeah, it is being tracked.
And from what I recall, some of her charges are allocable to projects in town. Is that
Yes, yeah,
correct?
these are just the project, I'm just talking about her town work
Okay,
that is charged to the general fund. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, this entire conversation is general fund only.
okay.
No.
Just want to clarify that. 'Cause it's an important point. Those other costs are going to show up at some point. All right. Well, let's bring it back for discussion at the council. Let's see.
And
So,
Could I follow up on that last?
yeah,
the legal?
feel free.
So we got a couple more months to go for
Right.
legal expenses. Do we anticipate any large ones? Because I mean, if we're at roughly 190 and we've got 245 in the budget, that seems like we're roughly on track. Maybe we're going to be a little over, but we're not wildly over like we've been in the past.
Every time she's contacted, the meter's running.
Right, so you're suggesting that we control the contact or tell her to control who she
Right.
responds to, okay?
And then add to, I'll try and answer Rita's question about rec fees and rentals. We're covering our costs associated with parks and rental, park fees. We don't do in kind. We don't record in kind. We don't, so I'm not understanding the basis of the question, but what we take in revenue does cover the cost of the service. It
Um,
covers the maintenance costs and.
Rita, if you have a quick clarification, but I don't want to open this up for more public comment.
Like if this group here rents the hall
Right.
to have a party, is that then balanced out, that amount given in kind? Is it shown anywhere? Or if there was a happening on the field, the rental of the field, like if I rented the field, I'd have to pay. But if someone was then gifted the field, is that amount then balanced out somewhere and given to?
No,
I'm not even sure that scenario
that's,
exists.
that doesn't happen.
Okay,
So
I'll leave it at that.
I mean, I've worked in 4 other cities, never had that situation where, I mean, if there's a nonprofit, they're not charged. So
Yeah.
it's just whatever our costs are, we record the cost of our service, but we don't, there's no in-kind write-off.
Okay, yeah, let's move on.
Can
All
I
right, back to
actually ask-
discussion.
Can
Yeah,
I ask 2 questions from Rita's comments?
quickly, because and then maybe I'll ask you to get started on the discussion portion, Helen,
Uh,
if you want to.
So the contracts, and maybe Rita was not talking about this because it sounded like the in-kind was more of her focus, but I was curious about the contracts around the parking lots that we have with Alpine Inn and with, I don't know, particularly for Alpine Inn, for those contracts. Where are those recorded in the revenue?
Those are recorded in Department 610, under the lease for parking lots. And it's, Alpine Inn and Ladera Oaks.
Okay.
And those, Ladera Oaks lease expires at the end of next year. But yeah, we need to renegotiate those contracts as well.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I had is about the electric trucks. We are mandated by the state if our fleet is over 10 to convert to all electric on a phased-in approach. But and I don't want to assume, but my assumption is that we're under a fleet of 10 for medium. I think it's like 6,500 pounds and over. Is that accurate? Are we mandated to switch to electric as well?
We have less than 10 vehicles.
Okay.
Thank you.
So those are my 2 questions.
But that money is not in the budget anymore.
Yep.
Okay.
Just
Right.
double checking about the mandates.
Helen, do you want to get started on discussion?
Actually, can I let my other colleagues go first, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Craig, how about you?
So thank you for the presentation. It's, like you say, I think next year is our bridge year. I think we know how we're going to get through next year. I think it's really when you look at the graphs about what happens in the follow-on years. So, that's really where this discussion is going to get more interesting in the next, let's say in the next 6 months. I think you've heard identified, the areas that I would expect that staff would look at, and it's basically IT services, fire expenses, planning expenses, the sheriff expenses, and legal expenses. And I just think we need to make sure that we kind of go through those with a fine-tooth comb and understand, which things we're paying for, what do we have contracts, do we need them? Just because, I have seen that some of this is, we've done it in the past, so we just keep doing it. But we don't actually question whether we still need to do it or whether it's the most cost effective. So I think that would be my part of this discussion. And then with this comment, with the comments that you're getting from the council today, then you're going to come back on, this is June 8th, with an actual proposed budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Mary?
Well, I'm continuing to harp on the number of employees, which I'm wondering whether the 18 is is realistic for budget security, whether we should go down on that number to what we actually have. And then as we develop and we figure out what our finances are, the new manager can work with what the ideal allocation of employees is. So that's the thing I keep harping on because, but just to say the most important thing, which is that you've done an incredible job making this more obvious. So we all really feel that, and the trust is high. You got it. And just making sure that we really are making the budget reflect reality. That's my goal. I'm sticking to it.
Okay, Rebecca?
I mean, I agree with what my colleagues have said. I guess I don't yet have a good feel on what the actual state is of the budget as a whole, and I understand we won't really get to that until June. Correct me if that's not correct. We're gonna get more information before that. But right now, we're on target for 24-25 to be balanced. And so from my understanding, just looking at the sheriff's contract, which, let me see if I pull it up here. So the sheriff's contract for 24-25 is 2.38, and then for 25-26, it's 2.5. So that's 250,000 more. So
It's actually 334,000 because we lost half of the credit.
oh, okay, 335. So it's even worse. So if we're going to have a balanced budget and nothing else were to change, but as you've shown us, everything is going up. Everything. I mean, staff costs, staff benefits, insurance for everything across the board. So I would think conservatively saying that we need to come up with $400,000 to $500,000 worth of costs, assuming our revenues don't go up as very much, which maybe they will go up a bit more because a lot of houses have been selling for some really crazy amounts. So it sounds like to me that if we're going to keep going for next year, that we've got to find $400,000 to $500,000 worth of cuts. Am I missing something?
You're not. You're not. But we're still fine tuning and refining.
So when I kind of look at this little image that was in the packet for the fiscal forecast, the cross line happens at 26, 27, but does this include that huge increase in the sheriff?
No, that was from November.
So we're going to be crossing the line in the next few months. I mean, December when we have to pay the sheriff,
No,
right?
we still have 2 million in reserve.
But does that reserve number include what may very well be the 20%?
And I haven't revised my fiscal forecast yet. That number you're looking at is from old data from November.
Okay, so you're thinking that we will balance our budget by going into the reserves if we don't find an
Well, if
alternative
that may be
in the short term.
that's going to be the last resort.
Otherwise cutting
Otherwise, it's going to be cuts.
for this coming year. Okay, well, I just hope people are listening. I hope this gets out to the community that we have very hard choices to make, including not just cutting, but also figuring out where we're going to raise revenues, because we may get through this year with playing around with our reserves, which is not the greatest thing in the world to do. But the reality is we don't, as a bedroom community, which is really what we are, raise enough money. So we, as a community, are going to need to tax ourselves. And I know everybody hates that word, but we are going to need to pay a little bit more, each of us, to cover our services. And that's, I guess, my comments.
Well, and that was the thinking of the finance committee, to reduce it to 20%. to give us that flexibility.
Okay. Helen?
So like my colleagues, thank you for the, your thorough presentation. This has been super helpful and I appreciate all like your patience with the questions too. And like my colleagues, I'm very concerned about the state of our budget. So I appreciate what Vice Mayor Taylor said about looking at every single contract, right? Who provides services, whether it's planning, legal, sheriff, fire, etc. And I have to be careful talking about legal because our legal representation in Portola Valley is also my legal representation at work. So probably would need to recuse myself on that. So I can't say more about legal. But I also, while we're looking at contracts, and I love Woodside Fire Protection District, I think, I love them. But there is discussion in San Mateo County about consolidation so that to save taxpayer money. So I would appreciate if staff, when we're talking about looking at the fire contract, to also, look at the consolidation ideas that are floating around San Mateo County, because to have executive replication at multiple different firehouses does not save us money in the end. So I am glad to hear that we have reserves right now still. Makes me nervous that we would dip into those. Like I think that, in worst case scenario, to use those for emergency opportunities. So I'm not happy, I'm definitely not happy with how it's trending. And we definitely, and I agree with Councilmember Flynn that, people, we will need to look at taxes potentially, to pay for services. And we keep hearing about people's permits not happening and people like the town center front desk is not open. So, if you want services, we are going to have to look at revenue enhancement options. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. I thought Gary went, but if
Yeah,
not, feel
well,
free.
the only thing I would like to say in response to Helen, council member Walter's comment was that I think there are some things that are cheaper to make it feel like we're providing services. And if we could look at those, that would be good. For example, a drop-off box at the door when the door is locked, instead of having to knock and then hope to get somebody, and just a drop-off box that's locked so that you can feel that you're attended to when you come. I think we can put forward more services without a lot of expense. The things that are really expensive are things that people do not see, like the sheriff's contract. So I think we can do a lot to serve the community without increasing the cost as much as we're currently doing. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
Judith, could I add one more comment? Sorry.
Last one. I gotta have my chance to.
I think you have half an hour, right? I don't know. Yeah, just my other quick comment was LAFCO, just it related particularly to the fire district. LAFCO in 2007, that was the last time they did their community service report, which is supposed to be done every 5 years. And supposedly we're on now schedule after I asked for it for this fall. We hope it is the case, but they do indicate that from our 1% property tax distribution that we all pay for property, Woodside Fire actually gets 17.24%, and we, as you know, get 7%. So just to keep that in mind, that they have an alternate source of funding, and we are in addition paying from our budget for them for additional for services that may or may not fall under their purview. So just, I think that's something to keep in mind when we.
Yeah,
The
but-
county receives more than we do as well.
Yeah, those are good points. All right, so first, Tony, versus where we were a year ago, there's a lot more clarity coming into what we're dealing with, what the history is, what the basis for the challenges are. Even if we don't want to hear it, it's been clear, and I really know how much work you've put in on that. So really the community is indebted to you for being so focused on helping us understand. The areas where I still feel, and it's not through anyone lack of trying, it's because these are hard things to get your bearings on, are around the use of consultants and the current contracts. And as I discussed earlier or raised earlier, I do feel that we've got to get, for major ticket items, a better understanding of what we're doing through the use of contractors, particularly for planning, but there could be others as well. And so I want there to be a good cost benefit to making that inquiry in the next month or two in order to inform the budget. But I still feel like there's something there that could be helpful for us to understand and maybe give you some direction on. The sheriff's contract is a conundrum. That's been a difficult situation on so many levels. It's almost leaves one incredulous. But I do think, as people are saying, we've got to explore alternatives. We've got to look at the service level. And over the next year or so, if we can pressure test what we're getting and is that what we need, that looks good, like a good use of time. Whether we could do that in time for the budget, I'm not sure. But I do think there's some information that's going to start flowing to help us all understand that major cost in better detail. One thing I did need to ask you about is the user fee study, like where are we on understanding that? It might not be a major revenue enhancement, but I'd like to understand what the next inflection points are around that.
So there's going to be two, because of building and planning fees and the development impact fees, they're going to require a 60-day notice in the public hearing. Those fees will not be enacted until either September or October. And then we'll have the other fees, the ones that are not subject to, we'll have those hopefully that will come back in June. If not,
Okay.
it'll be in July.
Okay, so we'll start seeing some updates
Yes.
and maybe at least creating some
Yep.
income flow
Yes.
through that. Good. I do know, just for the public's benefit, we've been trying to work with the town attorney and figure out the best way to use her effectively for certain types of things. I do want the public to understand that for things like public records requests, those are out of our control and they're major time sinks. And we can't predict what that's going to be like over the next 4 or 6 months. But we have been looking, and she's been giving us some feedback on where to be more efficient, where she might not be needed. And I just think that's a work in process that we can continue to look at. And the last part is, I think you're hearing a messaging about using resources that are available, and that's not going to be necessarily for the finance function, but where the town can use committee resources and committee expertise. For example, trails and paths, if they're trying to get certain things done. I think we also have to be looking to encourage their engagement and not be shy about saying, you could really help us if you were to take on this task or that task appropriately. So I would just want staff to be looking to identify areas that maybe every little drop will help. There's not a lot of dollars to be had there, but it's also good for community engagement. So we could get a two-for benefit through that. But I do feel that this has been very helpful. It's been a long process, getting an understanding of where you are, getting bad news before you understand why it's happening. It's a hard thing for a community, so thanks for bearing with us. And we're not done yet, but we're so much better off in terms of knowledge than we were. And the last thing I'd say is I'd urge you to be collaborative if things are evolving in a direction that, is surprising or that you need input on. Let us know how to help. I don't want to create more process on your end, but to the extent that, things are being learned in real time and you might want some input or to have a short presentation on one item, I would welcome that so that we don't put things off, that we can kind of process once you're comfortable. I don't want preliminary information to be misleading,
Correct.
but this has to be a collaborative endeavor over the next 6 months, I think, to keep us all focused on the long run. So thank you. Anybody else have anything? I don't think so.
But I would like to,
Yeah, please.
when you were talking about the increases in expenses,
Yeah.
we're also seeing increases in revenues as well. So, I'm not, yes, that's one increase in expenses, but again, like UT's coming in way higher. So it's, there's some offsets and everything. So it's not just one aspect of the budget that's going to say, oh, I'm going to have to dip into all these reserves. But again, there's the other side as well. Revenues are coming in. I don't want to say hot, but they're coming in higher than what we had projected.
Well, and Tony, there's no question that expenses are going to outpace revenue
Yes,
increases
Yes.
for the next 10 years.
Yes.
Right? I mean, COLA alone has been huge over the last few years. So sure, I appreciate that there is a percentage increase in revenues, but it can be half of what the increase in
Oh, absolutely.
expenses. Yeah. so-
Absolutely, but I just didn't
Yeah.
want to say like,
Yeah.
I mean, we are, but we can't get through this without new revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
And to
Understand.
follow up on Councilmember Hufty's comment about looking for other ways to provide service that may cost less, I would like us to look a little bit closer on our online services, because my understanding is that we actually pay for some online permitting that we're not using, and maybe that could help us, if we could shift some online things like for classes or whatever, shift it into an online process, that may be a way to avoid people.
We are having those conversations.
Thank you.
One more thing, I
Yes.
just want to, we have the CIP coming on May 14th, correct? And then I think we have a picture of the whole budget coming May 28th.
Yep.
And then the budget coming June 11th. So there will be points along the way where you can interact again. And I think we have a public meeting, On
We have another
May-
town hall. next-
town hall on the revenues, I believe on May 7th.
It's on expenses. It's on.
That's-
Excuse me, on expenditures, what you heard tonight. So.
And let me ask, is there one place on the website where the next, what you just read out, Mark, can be easily accessible? Because I think people may want to see that laid out in terms of every couple of weeks.
Should be in the calendar.
And we'll put it in the newsletter too.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing that I think would help a lot is that if we could get the updated staff information on the website, because it appears that
Okay.
that deludes the public when you don't have, they don't know who's there.
All right.
Okay. Okay,
So-
if you're gonna talk, let's go online.
No, I think it
because
was-
It's hard for the public to hear.
So can I make a motion to adjourn? I think we're done.
Mary, did you want to make a
No,
comment?
no,
first?
that was my comment.
Oh, okay, yeah, please.
So motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, council.